Good afternoon. In the previous class, we have seen transitive closure, and with respect to transitive closure, we have also seen the methodology to find the transitive closure of a given relation. Now, in this class, as I've already mentioned, that we will be seeing an algorithm, that is Warshall's algorithm, which was created by Stephen Warshall in 1960s to create a easier method or a method which requires less number of steps to find the transitive closure of a relation. So now for Warshall's algorithm, as I mentioned, it was named after Stephen Warshall, who described the algorithm in 1960s. It is basically an efficient method for computing the transitive closure of a relation. Now, the earlier algorithm that was basically a brute force mechanism. That is, we looked at every edge and then we tried to find the transitive edge which was missing, or we added the edge which we needed for transitive closure. So that method used 2n cube into n minus 1 bit operations, that is n power 4 bit operations. Now for this, however, the transitive closure can be found by this algorithm, that is Warshall's algorithm, by using only 2n cube bit operations. So that is, it is an improvement. So this algorithm required n power 4, order of n power 4, that is uh, n power 4 operations, while this requires only n cube operations. We usually ignore the constants 1, 2, minus 1, plus 1, because what we require is the power in terms of n, that is if n cube n power 4. So obviously we know order of n will be the least amount of time if we look in powers, then it will be order of n squared. So order of n cube will always be better than order of n power 4. So these are the number of operations we require in Warshall's algorithm. So this is the preferred method for finding the transitive closure. Now, suppose that if we have a relation R on a set with n elements, and the vertices are, that is the vertices in this diagraph, if we create a diagraph of relation R, the vertices are v1, v2 and so on up to vn. They are arbitrarily, that is, there is no arranged order, we are just randomly assigning the vertices of to n elements. Then we have another concept which is important here is interior vertices. Now, what is an interior vertex? So if we have a path in the concept of interior vertices of a path is used in Warshall's algorithm. If suppose the path is starting from A and ending at B, and in between we have some m minus 1 vertices or maybe m vertices, then excluding the initial and the terminal vertex, all the other vertices are known as interior vertices. So if A, x1, x2 and so on up to xm minus 1 comma b is a path, its interior vertices are x1, x2 and xm minus 1, that is all the vertices excluding the first or the last or the initial or the terminal vertices. So this concept is important if we want to understand the concept of Warshall's algorithm. Now, for instance, another example, if we have a path from A which goes to C, D, F, G, H, B and then finally J in a directed graph or a digraph, then excluding this A and J, all the other vertices will be the interior vertices. C, D, F, G, H and B are the interior vertices. Similarly, in this path A, C, D, A, F, B, exclude the first vertex and the last vertex, and these are the interior vertices. So these are just simple examples to understand the concept. Now going to the algorithm, Warshall's algorithm is based on the construction of a sequence of 0, 1 matrices. So we create a sequence of 0, 1 matrices, and these matrices are given with the name W0, W1 and so on up to Wn, where W0 is your matrix for the relation. So generally how we create a matrix for a relation, W0 is the first matrix, that is the initial matrix for a given relation. Now from this W0, what we try to do is we create a matrix Wk, where Wk of ij is equal to 1, that is if there is a path from some vertex I to some vertex vj, that is if there is a path from some vertex vi to some vertex vj such that all the interior vertices of this path are in the set, that is our first k vertices in the list, and is 0 otherwise. Okay, so our wk of j is equal to 1 if there is a path from vi to vj, that is if we have all the interior vertices. Otherwise, if there is no such path, it will be 0. The wk matrix value will be 0. So we'll see with that with the help of an example. So the next thing is, note that wn will be equal to mr star. How did we find mr star? It was equal to mr join mr square join and so on up to mrn. Okay, so that is mrn. Now we will see the example. Now the problem is, let R be the relation with directed graph as shown in the figure, and A, B, C, D are the elements in the set. Now we have to find the matrices for W0, W1, W2, 3 and 4, and the matrix W4 is the transitive closure of R. So first and foremost, we have to see in this slide I have said that the final W4 matrix will be equivalent to all of the join of, that is the union of your mr square till wherever you get mrn. So here in this case your W4 is the final transitive closure. Now how do we find the transitive closure? I'll explain it briefly over here, then we will look at the overall problem. So first thing is, we have to assign the values v1 is equal to a, v2 is b, v3 is c and v4 is d. Now among this, what is the W0 matrix or W0 matrix? It is given by your matrix for the relation. And what is that? So over here, till now we have been given a relation, we created either a matrix or a digraph, but here in this case we have been given a matrix directly, and now we have to create a digraph directly and we have to create a matrix. So first and foremost, we will fill the diagonal elements, that is whether it is reflexive or not. That is actually simpler to do. So AA is not there, there is no loop on A, so this will be 0. Similarly, no loop on B, 0, no loop on C, 0, and no loop on D. So that is, there are no loops present on any of the vertices. Now from A, do we have a relation to B? No, we don't have a relation to B. So from A to B there is no relation, so it will be 0. Similarly, from A to C we don't have a relation, 0, and A to D we don't. Actually from A to D we have a relation, this one, this edge is a relation from A to D, so this will be 1. Then after that, from B to A, from B to A we have a relation, that is this edge, so this will be 1. B to B is 0. Then B to C also exists, this edge, so we will mark it as 1, and B to D there is no edge, so 0. After that, C to A we have an edge, this one, so this is 1. C to B, there is an edge from B to C but not from C to B, so this will be 0. And what about C to D? Yes, there is this edge, so this will be 1. Now from D to A, no, there is no edge from D to A, so this will be 0. What about D to B? 0. D to C, this is the edge from D to C, so this will be 1. So let's just write this a bit clearly. Instead of this ABCD, I won't write the ABCD. I'll just write the matrix. So the matrix is given as follows: 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, and then 0, 0, 1, 0. Okay. Now based on this matrix, we will have to create the W1 matrix. Now Let's see. So we have taken the 4 vertices, we have created the W naught matrix, and then after that, how should we create W1? W1 will have 1 in the matrix as its ijth entry, where I is the row and j is the column. If there is a path from Vi to Vj that has only V1 as an interior vertex. Okay. Note that all the paths of length 1 can still be used because they have no interior vertex. So we have to see wherever we have A as the interior vertex, there only for W1 we can add a 1. So let's write, this is a bit easier method. I will take 2 terms Pi and Qj. Now in the W1 matrix, what I will do is, I will place all the ones that we already have in the same position. So in the first row we have 1 over here, in the second row we have 2 ones, that is in the first and the third place. In the third row we have 2 ones again, and in the fourth row there is 1. After that, take the first row and the first column. Okay. Now in the first column, at which position do we have 1? We have 1 at the position 2 and 3. Okay, just write that below Pi. And in the first row, which position do we have 1? We have a 1 at position 4. Okay, now which vertex is this second one? This will be your B and C, or you can even understand by 2 and 3, I suppose, since we have taken V1, V2, V3 and V4. Now, so we have to make a pair of 2, 4 and 3, 4. So let's write this 2, 4 and 3, 4. We have to add ones at these 2 positions. Now, why do we have to add ones at these 2 positions? Because A is the interior vertex from B to D. So at 2, 4, please check. At 2, 4, we have to add a 1. So here it is 0 in W0. We have to add a 1 over here. At 3, 4, there is already a 1. Now, why did we add a 1 in the place of 0? We added a 1 in the place of 0 because there is a path from B to D. Let's check our graph again. There is a path from B to D, and that is the reason we had to add the value 1. Let's look at that graph again to understand why we are adding 1. So look in the graph, we have the pair BA from B to A, and also we have the pair A to D. If we have BA and AD, to make it transitive, which other pair should we have? We should have BD. So this vertex should be added in our graph. To add this vertex in the W1 matrix, we have added a 1 over here. From B to D, we have added a edge. Okay, I'm sorry, this is an edge. So from B to D, we need to have an edge. So this is the edge that we have added. Now next, after that, we have to create W2 matrix. So W1 matrix is done. That is, we have seen where A is the interior vertex and added the 1 over there. This is the only pair we could, this is the only edge that we could have added in the W1 matrix. Now we have to move on to W2 matrix. So this is here W1 matrix that we have written. Now W2, in the case of W2, we have to take, if there is a path from Vi to Vj that has only V1 and or V2 as its interior vertices. So we have already done this part where V1 is the interior vertex, that is A is the interior vertex. So we have to move to the next one, that is where B is the interior vertex. Because now if you look over here, for this value, if I take Pi and Qj for W1, now let's look at the values. For W1, we have ones at position 2. We have to look at the second column and second row. In the second column, there are all zeros, so there is nothing over here. In the second row, we have ones at the position 1, 3 and 4. Can we create any pair of elements? No, we cannot create any pair. because there are no edges that have B as a terminal vertex. No new paths are obtained when we permit B to be an interior vertex. Hence, W2 is equal to W1. Since we cannot create any new matrix with this values, so W2 that we are taking will be equal to W1. Now, so W2 is the same. Now we have to take W3. For W3, consider the same matrix and we have to take the third row and third column and change the Pi and Qj value. Now in this case, I am considering this as W2 and I am considering Pi and Qj. For W2, I have to take the third row and the third column. So let's take the third row and the third column. In the third column, we have one set position 2 and 4, and in the third row, we have one set position 1 and position 4. Now we have to create a pair, so 2 1, 2 4, 4 1 and 4 4. So I'll write that 2 1, 2 4, 4 1 and 4 4. Now let's look back on our original diagram. So we said we have taken the pairs 2 1 for W3. We are supposed to write once at these position, but why are we writing once at these position? I'll let you know. So 2 1 is V2 comma V1. What is V2? V2 is B over here and V1 is A. We need to have a BA. So we need to have an edge from B to A, which is already there. Okay. Why do we need? Because we have B to C and C to A. So we need to have BA, which is already there. Now the next one is BD. Okay. So from B to D, we already had an edge in our W1. So even that is there. After that, we need to have DA. Now, what is the reason for DA? For this, let's look at the pairs. So here, if you notice, we have a edge from D to C, this one, and we also have an edge from C to A, this one. If we have an edge from D to C and C to A, to make it transitive, we need to have an edge DA. So AD is there, we need to have DA. That is this edge. So we are adding this edge DA. Now another thing is, if we have DA, now the next will be, the final one is 4 4, that is we need to even have D comma D. Why do we need this D comma D? So for D comma D, if you notice, we have these two edges, D comma C and C comma D. If we have these two edges, then to make it transitive, we need D comma D, that is a loop on D. So for that reason, we need to add these two edges. Already two are present. 2 1 and 2 4 is present in W1. In W3, we need to add 4 1 and 4 4. So the same will be added in the W3 matrix. So we have added this one and this one in our W3 matrix. Now finally, we have to take Pi and Qj for fourth row and fourth column. So for the fourth row and fourth column, let's first write the value of Pi. For Pi, every time you have to take the column, we have all the 4 ones. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And Qj, we have to write 1, 3, 4. Now create all the pairs. So 1, 1, we already have a 1. What about 1, 3? 1, 3 also has a 1. So instead of creating all the pairs, just put a tick mark on W3, or you can write 1 directly over here. Because every time while you are writing this matrix, you have to fill all the ones and then look for the condition, as I have shown you in the first step. So 1, 1 is there, 1, 3 is there, 1, 4 is there. I'll mark it over here. Then the next is we have 2, 1, 2, 3 and 2, 4. Now for this row, third row, we have 3, 1 and 3, 4. We need to have 3, 3. So for 3, 3, make it as 1. You can go back and check for which edge you are adding this. So that is, you are making a loop at C comma C. Just check why you are making a loop at C comma C. If you have CD and DC, then you need the CC edge to make it transitive. So for this edge CC, you are adding here 1, and then for 4, 1, 4, 3 and 4, 4, you already have a 1. So this is the last matrix W4 which we have created is the matrix of the transitive closure. So this algorithm is Warshel algorithm, which is an improvement on the transitive closure algorithm that we have seen in the earlier class. So this is the algorithm. The algorithm is usually not asked, but the methodology is asked for LAQ. This is an important algorithm which I believe came in the last year's question paper. So Warshel algorithm, procedure Warshel, we are taking at the beginning we are taking a 0, 1 matrix which we have initialized to W. Now for k is equal to 1 to n, I is equal to 1 to n, and j is equal to 1 to n, each time we take the pi and qj values and accordingly create the next matrix W1, W2, n until we get the transitive closure. Now the next topic is equivalence relations, which I believe we have already seen after seeing the reflexive, symmetric and transitive relations. So any relation which is all reflexive, symmetric and transitive is known as an equivalence relation. Please refer back to the earlier lecture of transitive relations, which is I believe the lecture number 4.2, and you can find the explanation here. For the equivalence relation, we will be seeing an important problem based on a digraph. Determine whether the relation with the directed graphs shown are equivalence relations or not. So solve these two diagrams by yourself. I'll be solving this diagram. So for this diagram, first and foremost, you have to assign it some relation name. So we will assign it the relation R. Now for this relation R, what are all the edges of this relation? So we have A comma A. Next we have A to B. And do we have A to C? No, there is no A to C. We have A to D then. So we have A to A, AB and AC. Not AC, it is AD. Yeah, AA, AB, AD. Now after that we have BB, then BC. So before BB, let's write BA, then BB and BC. Do we have anything from B to D? No. After that, do we have anything from C to A? No, there is no such thing. What about C to B? Yes. C comma C then, because there is a loop, and C comma D. Then finally for D, we have a relation from D to A, DA. From D to B, there is nothing. Then we have D to C and then D to D. Now once we have written all the edges as in the form of a relation, then after that you have to check for all the three properties. That is, for equivalence relation, you have to check for reflexive, symmetric and transitive. For reflexive property, you have to check whether there is a loop at every vertex. Yes, A, B, C, D all have a loop, so this is a reflexive relation. What about symmetric? If we have an edge from A to B, we need to have an edge from B to A also. Similarly, it is the case for all the other edges, distinct vertices edges, that is A to D, similarly D to C and B to C. So it is symmetric. Now what about the transitive property? If we have AB and BA, so I am considering AA. Let's take the first two pairs, AA and AB, then I need to have AB, that is there, and then again AA and AD, again AD will be there, AB and BA will be AA. So this way you have to check for all the pairs and you can actually verify that it is transitive also. So for this relation R, the diagram given for the relation R, it satisfies all the three properties: reflexive, symmetric and transitive. So when it satisfies all the three properties, what we can do is we can tell that it is an equivalence relation. Similarly, you can take the other two graphs and specify the same. Thing is basically whenever your relation R is reflexive, antisymmetric and
transitive. Whenever it satisfies the RAT, while A over here is antisymmetric, not asymmetric. Very, very important and to be remembered is that A is supposed to be antisymmetric. So over here, whenever your partial order relation is basically when a relation R is reflexive, antisymmetric and transitive, it is also known by the name of partial ordering set. So it is basically known as coset also. Let's see the definition in detail. A relation R on a set S is called a partial order if it is reflexive, antisymmetric and transitive. A set S together with a partial ordering R is called a partially ordered set, coset, and is denoted by S, R. And partial ordering are used to give an order to sets that may not have a natural order, and it is represented by the symbol less than or equal to. Now the question is, show that the greater than or equal to relation is a partial ordering on the set of every integers. So basically what is the relation R such that it is greater than or equal to. So if we have the relation R and what is the domain? It is a set of integers. So our relation is basically, if I take the integers 1, 2, 3 and I am taking the greater than or equal to relation, then it can be represented as, is 1 greater than or equal to 1? Yes. So we are supposed to write 1, 1. Is 2 greater than or equal to 1? Yes. So 2, 1 and then 3, 1. Similarly, we write 2, 2, 3, 2 and then lastly 3, 3. Now for this relation, we are supposed to check for reflexive, antisymmetric and transitive properties. We have 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. So this is a reflexive relation. What about antisymmetric? If we have A, B, let's revise the definition of antisymmetric. If A, B belongs to R and B, A belongs to R, then A is equal to B. So if we have 1, 1, we have 1, 1 is equal to 1. Okay. 2, 1, what about 1, 2? Does not exist. So we don't need to check for this. Same is the case. So it is antisymmetric. What about transitive? Transitive, how should we check for transitive? If we have 3, 1 and then 1, 1, then if this is your AB, BC, then we are supposed to check for AC, which is again 3, 1. Similarly, this will satisfy the transitivity property also. So this relation with only 3 integers and the condition greater than or equal is a transitive relation. Now let's see with respect to all the integers. Because A is greater than or equal to, for every integer A, the greater than or equal to is reflexive. If A is greater than or equal to B and B is greater than or equal to A, then A is equal to B. So our relation is reflexive, as I have just shown you with the help of an example. Hence, if you are seeing about this one, generally, if we take 2, 3, 2, 3 is greater than or equal to 2, then we can't usually write 2 greater than or equal to 3. 2, 3 won't appear in your relation. And if it is not appearing, then we don't need to check for the antisymmetric property. Hence, it is basically antisymmetric. So, what about transitive? If we have 3, 2, can we have 2, 1? Okay. If we have 3 greater than 2 and 2 greater than 1, then obviously we will have 3 greater than 1. Hence, it is also transitive. So, your greater than or equal relation on the set of integers is a partial ordering. Or it can also be known as coset. It follows that greater than or equal to is a partial ordering on the set of integers, and Z, greater than or equal to, that is your set of integers along with the condition that greater than or equal to is a coset. Now the next thing is Hasse diagrams. Now what do you mean by Hasse diagrams? Whenever we have relations and functions, we can represent it with the help of a graph or a diagram. Similarly, to represent specifically posets, we have representing posets, we have Hasse diagram. Okay, the graphical representation of a poset is done by a Hasse diagram. Now, what does a Hasse diagram mean? Like relations and functions, partial orders have a convenient graphical representation which is known by the term Hasse diagram. First and foremost, let's again revise what does a partial order set entail. So partial order set is basically a set which is reflexive, antisymmetric and transitive. We have to remember this. It is very, very, very important. Now, Hasse diagram. Consider the digraph representation of a partial order. Because we are dealing with a partial order, we know that the relation must be reflexive and transitive. Okay, antisymmetric property is generally usually valid because if a relation is reflexive and transitive, we can usually easily check for antisymmetric. So the graph must follow some of these conditions, which are, we can remove all the self loops. Why can we remove all the self loops? Because any partial order relation is anyway reflexive. So this property of reflexive, when do we get loops in a graph? Whenever we have 1, 1, 2, 2, then only we get the loops. So we can remove all the self loops. And we can also remove all the transitive edges. That is, if we have AB edge, BC edge, and if we have AC edge, it is not necessary that we have all the three edges. Even one edge which is representing the transitivity condition is existing, we can remove the other edges. So remove all the transitive edges. And lastly, we can even remove the direction because any Hasse diagram should be pointed in the upward direction. So it is always in the upward direction. This can be easily understood with the help of a diagram. So let's take a diagram for Hasse diagram. And the resulting diagram which we get is far simpler. Let's take an example with the same. So let's take this example. We are supposed to consider the directed graph for the partial ordering A comma B, where it is the condition is A should be less than or equal to B on the set 1, 2, 3, 4. So what will be our partial ordering? So basically partial ordering means it will satisfy the reflexive, antisymmetric and transitive properties. And what will be our set? The set will be A is always less than or equal to B. So we will have 1, 1, and then can we have 1, 2? Yes. So we have 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4. A is less than or equal to B. What about 2, 1? We can't have 2, 1 because 2 is not less than or equal to 1. So skip 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 4. Then lastly we have 3, 3, 3, 4 and then 4, 4. Okay, so this is your partial ordering and it will satisfy these three conditions. You can verify it. Now for this set, for this relation, we are supposed to draw the directed graph. To draw the directed graph, first and foremost, we have to take the 4 vertices. Let's take the 4 vertices. So let me take it over here. Since our directed graph is to be in the upward direction, I am taking the vertices in this way. Okay, so now these are your 4 vertices. Let's name it. We have 1 and then 1, 2 and 1, 3 and 1, 4. So basically you can see that it is the relation should begin from 1 and go to 2, 3, 4. So we can take our 1 in the lowermost position and then this is 2, what is 2, 3 and 4. Now after that, we know that it is reflexive, so we can draw the self loop. So generally we will have the self loop 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3 and 4, 4. After that, we have a relation from 1 to 2. So let's point it. Then we have from 1 to 3. And lastly, we have relation from 1 to 4. Okay. After that, we have a relation from 2 to, which is done. We have from 2 to 3 and 3 to 4. And then also we have from 2 to 4. Okay. So this is done. Now, what was the conditions for a partial order to create a Hasse diagram? To create a Hasse diagram, the conditions were we are supposed to remove all the loops, remove all the transitive relations, and then remove the directions also. First and foremost, in the next step, we will remove the loops. So again, let's continue with our second graph, that is continue with our second step. So these are your vertices again, which are represented as 1, 2, 3, 4. We are not drawing the loops in the second step, so we will just draw the relations which are transitive. So from here, we have from 1 to 1, and then we have 2 to 3, 3 to 4. Also, we have 1 to 3 and 1 to 4, and finally from 2 to 4. Let's give the directions. All are in the upward direction. Next, what we can do is we can remove the transitive relations and we can also remove the directions. So in the next step, let's draw our 4 vertices again. And name the vertices as 1, 2, 3, 4. Now what we are supposed to do, we are supposed to remove all the transitive edges. That is, if we have a relation from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, then obviously partial ordering means we will have a relation from 1 to 3 and it need not be represented. So basically, if we have a relation from 1 to 2 and 2 to 3, we don't need the relation from 1 to 3. So for that, we don't need this part, this one. So the next is, if we have a relation from 2 to 3 and also if we have a relation from 3 to 4, then we don't need the 2 to 4 relation. Okay. So also we know that the Hasse diagram is always in the upward direction. So it basically means that from this diagram, from the last diagram only, we can understand or we can see that it represents our this relation 1 1 1 2 1 3 and 1 4, because this directed graph shows that we have a relation from 1 to 2 3 and 3 4. So we can easily see, let's just clearly see this diagram. So from this diagram, we understand this is our final Hasse diagram, and Hasse diagram means it is for partial ordering and it is generally reflexive. So reflexive means we will have 1 1, 2 2, 3 3 and 4 4. Okay, so we can see our reflexive properties. After that, we will have the 1 2, which is already shown, and how do we understand it is from 1 to 2, because Hasse diagrams are in the upward direction. So we have 1 2, 2 3, 3 4, just from seeing this. Now we have 1 2 and 2 3. So naturally it means that we have 1 3 because it satisfies transitivity, and then we have 1 2, we have 2 3 and 3 4. So it easily means we also have 2 4, and if we have 1 2 and 2 4, then it easily means that we have 1 4. Why am I saying that? Because our Hasse diagrams are basically representations of partial ordering. Partial ordering generally satisfies this partial orderings exist only when they satisfy the property of transitivity. Transitivity is if we have AB belongs to R, BC belongs to R, then obviously AC should be in R. This is your transitivity. So this is what the Hasse diagram is represented with. Let's see the explanation for the same. Many edges in the directed graph for a finite poset do not have to be shown. What is your poset over here? It is your partial ordering set, because they must be present. For instance, consider the directed graph for the partial ordering which I have just shown a comma b such that on 1 2 3 4, because this relation is obviously is a partial ordering, it is reflexive and it does not need the loops, and its directed graphs has loops at all vertices. Consequently, we do not have to show these loops. That is, we can remove these loops because they must be present. And because the partial ordering is transitive, we do not have to show the edges that must be present because of transitivity. That is, if we have 1 2 2 3, then we don't need to show the edge 1 3. Okay. And if we assume that all the edges are pointed upward, we even don't need to show the direction. We don't need to point the direction. Next. In general, we can represent a finite poset by using this procedure. Start with the directed graph for this relation. Because a partial ordering is reflexive, a loop is present at every vertex A. If your vertex is A loop is present at every vertex. Remove these loops. Next, remove all the edges that must be in the partial ordering because of the presence of other edges and transitivity. That is, if you have xy and yz, then you can remove xz. And finally, arrange each edge so that its initial vertex is below the terminal vertex. So always your initial vertex should be below, terminal vertex should be above. And remove the arrows which are pointing from initial vertex to the terminal edges, because your Hasse diagram should be in the upward direction. These steps can be defined, and only a finite number of steps need to be carried out for a finite poset. When all these steps have been taken, the resulting diagram contains sufficient information to find the partial ordering which can be explained. And this diagram is called Hasse diagram. Now for this, let's take another example. Draw the Hasse diagram representing the partial ordering A comma B. What is the condition for your ordered pair A comma B? A divides B on 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 12. So let's write our condition and solve the problem. So for this, we have A comma B. What is the relation condition? A should divide B. And your set is 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 12. Now for this, let's see the relation R first. Relation R can be easily shown in this way. So it is reflexive. We will have 1 comma 1. And does 1 divide 2? No. So A divides B. So 1 will divide 2. So we have 1 2, 1 3, 1 4, 1 6, 1 8 and 1 12. Now what about 2? 2 will divide 2 itself, and 2 will divide 3. No, it won't. So 2 4, 2 6, 2 8, 2 12. After that, we have to take for 3. 3 will divide itself. Will 3 divide 4? No. So 3 6, 3 8 won't happen. 3 12. Similarly, after that, we will have 4. 4 won't divide 6, but it will divide itself. It will divide 8 and it will also divide 12. Then 6, itself and 12, and then finally 8, 8 and 12, 12. This is their entire relation. Now for this relation, let's take the Hasse diagram. So for this Hasse diagram, now for the earlier problem that I have taken, I have written the relation R, and now we will draw the directed graph. For this directed graph, we are supposed to take the vertices. How many vertices should be there? So we have totally 7 elements. So let's take the 7 vertices. So the 7 vertices can be taken in this way. You can take it in any order. This is the order I am taking because it is easier to draw. When you have vertices in this order, you will understand what I am saying in a minute. So just, yeah. So since 1 is the relation which is our initial vertex for most of the cases, and it is not the terminal vertex in any of the other ordered pairs, so I have taken it at the bottom. Why is it? Because our Hasse diagram should always have the diagram in the upward direction. So this vertex is 1. Then we have these vertices 2, 3, because 2, 3 themselves after 1, they are the initial vertices, but they are not the terminal vertices. Then this can be taken as 4, 6, 8 and 12. Okay. Now, after that, you can see that each of them, this relation is partial ordering. It means it is reflexive. We will also verify for the same. So, let's see. We have 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 6, 6, 8, 8, and this is actually 12, 12. So we have all the ordered pairs where A, A belongs to R. So let's create the loops. So the loops will be in this way: 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 6, 6 for 8, and then finally for 12. After that, we are supposed to take for all the other ordered pairs. So let's draw those. So from 1 we have the ordered pair, that is 1 is the terminal vertex for each and every other element. So let's draw that. We have 1, 2, 1, 3. I'll give the directions later. We have 1, 4, 1, 6, 1, 8, and then finally 1, 12. And for all of these, the direction is from 1. So let's give the direction: 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 6, 1, 4, 1, 12. Okay. So now this entire part has been completed. Now for the next, we have from 2. 2, 2 is already done. So this is done. Next we have 2, 4. 2, 4, 2, 6 and 2, 8. So let's draw that. So from 2 we have 4, and then 2, 6, 2, 8 and 2, 12. So 2, 8 I'll draw later. So for first we'll draw 2, 12. Now let's give the direction. Before that we have to draw 2, 8 also. So this is here 2, 8, and all of them are in the upward direction. And after that, so we have completed this part also where the initial vertex is 2. Next is 3, 3, which has already been done. Next we have to take for 3, 6. For 3, 6 again upward direction. So yeah, 3, 6. Then we have 3, 12. Okay, so let's draw the direction for 3, 6 and then 3, 12. So this is 3, 6 and this is 3, 12. After that, we have 4, 4, which has already been done. Next we have 4, 8. So for 4, 8, it is in this way, and then we also have 4, 12, and let's give the direction for both of these. This is 4, 8, and finally 4, 12. So this is also done. Then we have 6, 6, which we have already done. 6, 12 should be drawn. So for 6, 12, 6, 12, and the direction will be again in the upward direction. So this is here 6, 12. Now this is the 8, 8 is done, 12, 12 is done. So this is the actual digraph for your partial ordering of this relation R. So this is the relation for which we have drawn the directed graph. Now for this, to represent it as a Hasse diagram, remove all the loops. So first and foremost, we are supposed to remove all the loops. Let's remove it. So this is the same diagram that I have drawn over here. The only thing is I have removed these self loops. So the self loops have been removed and you have got the resultant diagram. So let's write the second step over here. Remove all self loops. After that, the third step is, that is, delete all the edges. Delete all edges implied by the transitive property. Implied by the transitive property. Now that means if we have 1, 2 and 2, 4, we don't need this 1, 4 edge. So which edge am I speaking about? I'm speaking about this edge 1, 4. I don't need this. Okay. So we are supposed to remove all the transitive property edges. So for this, we can easily get the diagram in this way. This is your vertex 1. So for the same vertices, now I just have to draw the edges and I don't need the transitive property. So for this, I can easily represent it this way: 1, 2, and then 1, 3, which is our initial. Then 1, 4, I don't need it because we have 2, 4. So 1, 2, 2, 4 means directly 1, 4. And then 1, 8 is also not needed. So let me just first write the names of your edges, vertices. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 12. Now for this, I can draw it 3, 6, and then finally 6, 12, 2, 6, and 4, 12. Now, what does this diagram mean? This diagram means that it represents 1, 2 and 2, 4. So 1, 4 is implied by the transitive property. Similarly, 1, 3, 3, 6, 1, 6 is implied by the transitive property. Same is the case with 1, 8 and 1, 12. What about 2, 12? If you have 2, 6 and 6, 12, that is, if AB, BC exists, then obviously if it is a transitive, then it should be AC should also exist in R. If your AB is 2, 6, BC is 6, 12, then 2, 12 is an obvious property of transitivity. So this is directly shown. And what about these directions? Why did I not show this? Because the last condition of your Hasse diagram is, the Hasse diagram is always represented in the upward direction, so we don't need the arrows. And that was the main reason why I took 1, which is the initial vertex at the bottom, along with the other vertices in this order. So this is your Hasse diagram. In this poset, we have a graphical representation which is known as, so the representation is known as Hasse diagram. Okay. Now, on the Hasse diagram, we will study a few properties of Hasse diagram. So right now, we are studying the properties of Hasse diagram. So there are various properties of Hasse diagram based on their elements. So we will have maximal and minimal element, and then we have lower bound, upper bound, then greatest lower bound and lowest upper bound, least upper bound. So greatest lower bound and least upper bound. And then finally, we will study the topic lattices, which is in the syllabus. So for us to study lattices, we need to cover all these topics. So let's begin the class for today. First and foremost, we will see maximal and minimal elements. So before that, let's see the previous Hasse diagram that I have given as an example in the class. So this was the example that we have taken in the class. Okay, so this was the diagram, the actual partial order representation. Then we removed the self loops. Over here we removed the direction and the transitive edges. So this was our final diagram. Now based on this final diagram, which is known as the Hasse diagram, we have to check out our properties. For that, to study the maximal element and the minimal element, the simplest definition can be as follows. So any element A, suppose the element name is A, it is known as maximal element. A is known as maximal element if there is no other B in the poset, if there is no B in the poset where A is less than B, that is A is always greater than B. Okay, and there is no other element in our poset which is greater than A. Okay, so this is called maximal. That is, in our poset we should find an element which is greater than all the elements, and there is no element which is greater than our A. Now similarly, with respect to minimal, if an element of a poset is called minimal if it is not greater than any element of the poset. So if in our poset, if we have an element C and there is no element which is lesser than it, okay, or every element is greater than that, then it is known as minimal element. So an element of a poset is called minimal if it is not greater than. So if we have lesser, we can write the negation as not greater than, correct? Not greater than any elements of the poset. Okay, and similarly, if we are taking with respect to A and B, then B, the element B should be always, there is no element B should, that is B should always be greater than C. Okay, that is our element B, which are all the other elements in the poset should be greater than C. So the basically what we can say is maximal and minimal elements can be easily spotted in our Hasse diagram. So whenever we are talking about maximal elements, then they are the top elements in the diagram, and the minimal elements are the bottom elements in our diagram. So this is the most easiest way that you can tell about maximal elements and minimal elements. Maximal elements is basically the top elements, while the minimal elements are the bottom elements. So in this diagram, what are the top elements? The top elements are 8 and 12. So 8 and 12, these two are known as the maximal elements. Okay, while the minimal element is the bottom element, which is 1. So this is minimal element. Now, one thing to be remembered over here or noticed over here is that we can have more than one maximal element and more than one minimal element. That is, whenever we are talking about maximal and minimal element, we may or may not have more than one element. Now, if we are taking the actual definition for the same, let's see the definition for maximal and minimal element. A is maximal in the poset S, which is denoted by lesser than or equal to symbol, if there is no B belongs to S such that A is lesser than B. That is, whenever A is a maximal element, A should always be, there is no B where it is satisfying this condition. Okay, A should always be greater than B. Similarly, an element of a poset is called minimal if it is not greater than any element of the poset. Okay, A is minimal if there is no element which is B is lesser than A. And maximal and minimal elements are easy to spot using a Hasse diagram. They are the top and bottom elements in the diagram. Now let's see an example. Which elements of the poset 2, 4, 5, 10, 12, 20, 25, this symbol here denotes divided, A divides B, what we have taken in the last diagram, are maximal and which are minimal. Now with respect to this, let's see the solution for the same. So over here, let's write the question and directly I'll be drawing the final Hasse diagram. What you can do is you can take this as a practice problem and try to practice the Hasse diagram. So let's just write the question first. 2, 4, 5, 10. This is very similar to the earlier problem, only the numbers have been changed. So you can solve it easily. And the condition is that A divides B. Now, for this we have to find the maximal element and minimal element. So if I am drawing the Hasse diagram as I have shown to you in the previous class, it will be as follows. So we have the vertices for all the elements in our set. Let's name them. So this will be 2, 5, 4, 10, 25, 12, 20. And yes, we can take the elements in any order, but we have to make sure that our Hasse diagram is in the upward direction, and I'll explain to you why I have taken it in this order. So 2 and 5, if we are saying the divisibility, they are not divisible by anyone but themselves. So basically you'll get a self group here, which will be removed in the first step. So directly if I do the Hasse diagram, in this case it will be 2 divides 4. Okay, so we will have this, and then we will have an edge, and then 4 will divide, 2 divides 10 also. Okay, 2 will divide 12 and 22, but over here we don't need the transitive edges, okay, because 2 divides 12. So we will move on to the next one, which is 4 divides 12 and 4 divides 20. Now you can see that 2 divides 4, 4 divides 12. So obviously 2 will divide 12. Similarly, 2 divides 4, 4 divides 20. So 2 will divide 20. We don't need the transitive edge. Now for 5, we will have 5 divides 10, and then 10 divides 20, and finally 5 divides 25. Okay, if we want to show the 5 divides 20 part, we don't need it because we have 10 divides 20. So if you remember the transitive property, if we have 5 divides 10 and 10 divides 20, if this is where AB belongs to R, BC belongs to R, then obviously AC will also belongs to R. That is 5 divides 20. Okay, so this is already explained in the Hasse diagram. We have to remove the transitive edges in the final step. So this is your final Hasse diagram. Now in this Hasse diagram, what I want to is maximal and minimal elements. So maximal and minimal elements, if you want to write it simply, what was maximal elements? Maximal elements were basically your top elements, minimal elements were your bottom elements. Okay, so the maximal elements can be defined as 12, 20 and 25, while the minimal elements are defined as the bottom elements 2 and 5. Now there might be a question that why is 25 taken? Is there any element above 20? No, it is the topmost element here. So that is why we have taken even 25. 12, 20 might be topmost with respect to this. But over here there is no element which is greater than 25. That is 25 does not divide any other element. Okay. 12 also does not divide any element in your set. So can 12 divide 10, 5, 4 or 2? No. Similar is the case with 20 and 25. That is the reason we have taken 25. While minimal elements are the bottom elements which is easily understood. Okay. Now the next is greatest element and least element. So greatest and least element, sometimes there is an element in a poset that is greater than every other element. So basically whenever we are speaking about greatest and least element, it is similar to maximal and minimal, but in the case of maximal and minimal you will have multiple maximal and minimal element. That is, you can have more than one maximal and minimal. But in the case of greatest and least element, there will be only one element which is greater than every other element in the poset, and such an element is called our greatest element, while there will be another element which is lower than every other element. There may be an element which is lower than or less than all the other elements in the poset. That is called the least element. And whenever you have greatest element, you have to understand that it is unique. That is, there will be only one greatest element. Similar is the case with the least element. Now in the next, let's take the example for the same. So in this diagram, the first one, we are supposed to determine whether we have greatest and least element. Least elements. So the least element in this diagram is A, because it is at the bottommost element. Okay. So I'll denote least with L and greatest with G. So in this case, our least element is A. What about the greatest element? Is there any element which is greater than all the other elements? No, all are at the same level, and if we write them in the form of maximal and minimal, the maximal elements will be all the three of them, that is B, C, D. But in the case of greatest, this poset does not have a greatest element. What about this diagram? In this diagram, the diagram B, this poset has no greatest element and no least element. So it does not have either of them. Now what about the next diagram? The next diagram, it has minimal elements as A and B. But is there a least element? No. So it does not have a least element, while the greatest element can be written as D. In the last diagram, do we have a least element? Yes. This is at the bottom and only unique. It is unique. So we have A, and the greatest element is unique at the top, and it is the element D. Okay. So this is the example of greatest element and least element. Now after that, we have a very important topic, which is upper bound and lower bound. Upper bound and lower bound. Sometimes it is possible to find an element that is greater than or equal to all the elements in a subset A of poset S. Okay. And it is always, poset is denoted always by this symbol. If U is an element of S such that A is less than or equal to U for all elements A belongs to A, then U is called an upper bound of A. While similarly, if there is an element which is less than or equal to all the elements of A, and if L is that element such that L is lesser than or equal to A for all the elements, then L is called the lower bound. So definition looks similar to your maximal and minimal elements. So let's see this with the help of an example. But one thing to be noticed over here is we are saying with respect to some subset of our set, we are supposed to take the greater elements and the lower elements. So let's see this with an help of an example. Find the lower and upper bounds of the subsets ABC, JH and ACDF in the poset with the Hasse diagram shown in the figure. Now for this Hasse diagram, what is the actual set? The actual set will be written as A, B, C, D, E, G, H, E, F, G, H, J. Okay, this is the actual set. Now from this set, we have taken 3 subsets and each of them individually is a sub-problem. So ABC, ABC, then we have another subset J and H, and then A, C, D, F. Okay, now let's take the first problem, which is for ABC. We have to find the lower bound and upper bound. So let's take the first problem, for which we have to find the lower bound and upper bound. So for this, we are finding for ABC. Now we have to check whether there are elements in the case of the first one. So we are solving for lower bound of ABC. Is there any element for which for the elements ABC, we have to find an element which is lesser than the 3 elements of the subset. Okay, so first we check for A. A, we will have a self loop, so it will be less than or equal to A is less than or equal to A, so correct. So for A we have the lesser element A. What about B? For element B, B itself will be one element, and also we write A comma B. So A is connected to B and it is the lower element. For B, we will have A comma B as the elements which is less than the element B. For C, we will have again A comma C itself. Now in this case, if you notice, for all the 3 elements, which is the common element which is less than your subset, the common element is A. So the lower bound of this set ABC is basically A. Lower bound for ABC is A. Now what about the upper bound? The upper bound for ABC. So we have to see all the elements common to ABC which are greater than, that is, which are greater than or equal to our elements in the subset. So let's see that. So for again the same set ABC, we are trying to find the upper bound. So for the element A, what are the elements greater than A, greater than or equal to A? For A, we will have all the elements including A, B, C, D, E. That is your entire set basically. So let's just not write it because it is the entire set. So this entire set is greater than or equal to A. Now what about B? For the element B, what are the elements greater than or equal to B? So that will be B itself, E, B, D, E. C is not connected to B, it is on the same level, so we are not supposed to write C. So we will have B, D, E. Then D is connected to G, so we will also have G, and E is connected to F, so we will have F, G, and then G is connected to H and F is connected to J, so all the elements. Okay, so these are the elements which are greater than or equal to B. Now what about the elements which are greater than or equal to C? So for C, C is not connected to D, C is only connected to these elements, E, F, J and H. So for C we will write E, F, J and H. Now, if you notice, what are the common elements from the elements which are greater than or equal to each single element? So, if you observe over here, we have EF, JH in the case of C. In the case of D also we have these four, and in the case of A also we have E, F, H, J. Now why aren't we taking G element? G is in both B's set and A set. The reason we are not taking G is because it is not the greatest element than C. It is not greater than or equal to C. We are always supposed to take the common elements. So that is the reason we are taking the four elements. So the upper bound in this case will be E, F, J and H. This is your upper bound. Okay. Now we will take the next problem. For the next problem, we have the set J and H. For J and H, what is the lower bound? So let's solve for that. What are the elements lesser than J and H? All the elements, including J and H themselves, are lesser than it. So for J, let's take it. For J, we will have A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay, so we will have A, B, C, D, E, F. Why are we not taking G and H? G and H are in no way connected to J. Okay, there is no transitive relation or any kind of H between G and H vertex. G and J and then H and J. So we are not taking them for that reason. Now what about H? What are the elements which are the lower bound of H? The lower bound of H will be all the elements excluding J. So elements excluding J means A, B, C, D, E, F, G and H. Why aren't we taking J? The reason we are not taking J is no way connected to H and it has no H between both of them. Now what will be the common elements? The common elements are the same, A, B, C, D, E, F. So for the second case, the lower bound is A, B, C, D, F, C, D, E, F. Okay. Now what about the upper bound? Upper bound for this set will be, if you notice, in this diagram, we have J and H. Are there any elements greater than J and H? No, there are no elements greater than J and H themselves. So there will be no upper bound for the second case. So this is your second case and there are no upper bounds for the second case. That is, you can just mention that no upper bounds. No upper bound. After that, for the last case, I'll give you the solution and similarly you can find the upper bound and lower bound. For ACDF, the upper bound will be F, H, J, okay, and the lower bound will be, this is your upper bound, and the lower bound for this same case will be A, simply A, okay. So this is the solution for the problem. Now similarly, you can take any other problem of the Hasse diagram. The previous Hasse diagram we have solved. Take a subset and solve the problem for the same. Now the next is least upper bound and greatest lower bound. Okay. The element X is called the least upper bound of the subset A if X is an upper bound that is less than every other upper bound of A. Because there is only one such element, if it exists, this element is called the least upper bound. That is, X is the least upper bound of A if A is less than or equal to X whenever A belongs to A, and X is less than or equal to Z whenever Z is an upper bound of A. Now, what does this mean? So in this case, in the same diagram that we have seen, let's find the greatest lower bound and least upper bound. We will first find it out, and after that we'll see the definition of which sets do we need. I want to find the greatest lower bound and least upper bound of the set B, D, G. Okay, so for B, D, G, let's show it where we have B, D, G. What are the upper bound? What is the upper bound of B, D, G? So you can see B is connected to has an edge with H. Similarly, D has an edge with H, and G also has an edge with H, and B also has an edge with G. D will have an edge with G, and the element G itself is greater than or equal to G. So the upper bound will be G and H, so in this case we have to find the least upper bound. Now, what does it mean by the term least upper bound? Least upper bound means among G and H, which is the minimal among G and H, which is at the bottom level among G and H. So G is lesser than H, so G is the least upper bound. Similarly, let's find the greatest lower bound. For greatest lower bound of the same elements B, D and G, which are the elements lower than all these? So A is one, okay, A is connected to all of them, and it is the lower element that is lesser than these three elements. And obviously we will have to take B itself because it is lesser than or equal to itself, less than D and less than G. So we have the lower bound elements. So let's mention this. These are our lower bound element. Now, with respect to lower bound, which is the greatest lower bound? So we have to see both of them and check which one is at the greater level or which is the greatest lower bound. So in this case, A is less than B. So B is our greatest lower bound. Okay, so in the case of lower bound we have to see the greatest element, while in the case of upper bound we have to see the least element. This is known as greatest upper bound and greatest lower bound and least upper bound. Now let's see the definition for the same. You have seen already. Similarly, the element Y is called the greatest lower bound of A if Y is a lower bound of A and Z is less than or equal to Y whenever Z is a lower bound of A. Okay, the greatest lower bound is unique if it exists, and the greatest lower bound and the least upper bound of a subset A are denoted by these two terms respectively. Now, with respect to the same diagram, I have given you this example of BDG and I have shown you. Now, the final topic in this is lattice. What do you mean by a lattice? A partially ordered set in which every pair of element has both a least upper bound and a greatest lower bound is called a lattice. What do you mean by that? If I am taking any pair in the partially ordered set, suppose if your partially ordered set is the set of elements 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 12, and with respect to this elements, the properties of A divides B, then if you are taking any pair of elements, then it should have the least upper bound and greatest lower bound. So if I am taking 1, 2, the subset 1, 2 should have a GLB and LUB. Similar is the case with any pair that you are taking. Let's see an example with the same. Determine whether the posets are represented by each of the Hasse diagram in the following figure are lattices. So these are the Hasse diagram. We have to check whether they are lattices or not. Because in these two cases, A and C, if you take AB, with respect to AB, what will be the greatest lower bound? It will be B. What will be the least upper bound? It will be, with respect to AB, if we are taking the least upper bound, it will again be B. Okay, so any two vertices if you take in this scenario, it will have the GLB and LUB. Now what about in the case of the Hasse diagram B? Suppose if we take the example of B and C, okay, they lie at the same level, and if I am taking B and C, what will be the upper bound of B and C? So the upper bound of B and C will be, for B it will be B itself, then we have D, E and F. What about C? For C we will have C, D, E and F. Now with respect to these two, what will be the upper bound? Upper bound will be D, E, F. This is your upper bound. Now if this is our upper bound, what is the least upper bound? Least upper bound should be unique, if you remember, and over here we have both